Hello, LinkedIn Live friends. We want to welcome you. A little bit of a cold open here. I'm Jim Collison. I'm here with Maika Leibbrandt, and we're going to spend some time with you while we're waiting for some individuals to get signed in, find the page, all those other things. We'd really want to hear from you in chat. So put where you're listening from, and then I'd love to know of your 6 through 10 if you have that unlocked, and we'll talk about how to do that here in a little bit. But of your 6 through 10, for those who know that, which one are you using the most right now? So let's throw those in chat. Maika, really quick, if I ask you that question for you, your 6 through 10, what would you
I was
say?
just about to cheat and look up your 6 through 10,
Uh,
but it's definitely number 6, connectedness. And we'll talk about this today,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't think I could tell you all 10, all 6 through 10, but I definitely know 6 connectedness feels like it's just part of the top 5.
Yeah, a good one to have right now with everything that's going on. I
Yeah.
would lean in, and I have been leaning in on ideation through this whole pandemic time. Like
And
that
where's
has
ideation
been
for you?
7.
Nice.
So that has been my go-to. So positivity 6, ideation 7, and it's just been a go-to as people are talking about things. Guys, we'll get started here in just a second. As you're joining us here, check in. Let us know where you're listening from. Seeing some you guys checking in, and then let us know. Same question. What are you in your? For those of you who know 6 through 10, what are you leaning in on right now? What theme are you using?
What's showing up for you?
If you want to, you can put all top 5 or whatever you want in the chat as well. We'd love to see some of those coming in, and welcome. We'll get started officially here just in just a second, but hang tight as we kind of get going here. I see some folks checking in. California seems to be representing pretty well. I'm seeing Nick jumping in from Chicago, so welcome as well. Maika, always great to be with you. So thanks for coming out and hanging out with me today.
This is one of the serious perks of working where I do, is I get to spend time with my friends.
Yeah, no, it's pretty great. Thanks for coming out on this kind of LinkedIn Wednesday, and let us know again if you're just jumping in, if you're just joining, you can put your top 5 in chat. Let us know where you're listening from in chat. Let us know if you know your 6 through 10, and you can post those if you want as well. Let us know what you're leaning into in that 6 through 10, and we'll get started here in just a second. Mike has got some great stuff as we think about those themes beyond your top 5. We'll have some great stuff going forward.
Jim, I have missed these people. I'm seeing friends who I know here. If you're brand new to Strengths or to us, you maybe should know that Jim and I have in our past hosted a weekly podcast, and a lot of the friends who are here with us right now have been part of that for us.
Yeah,
So it's great to be back. We haven't done it in a while. We're not saying it's over, but we've taken a bit of a break from it, so it's really fun to have folks back.
And if you haven't yet, these LinkedIn Lives have been appearing in the brand new CliftonStrengths podcast. So if you want to head out to any your favorite podcast app and just search the CliftonStrengths, all one word, podcast, you'll see a brand new podcast, and a lot of these LinkedIn Lives are going there. All right, Mike, I'm going to reset really quick because we're going to make this part of that podcast, and we're going to drop it in there.
Hold on.
And so let me.
You're going to need one of these.
Yes, give it.
You didn't tell me you were going to do this, but I feel like this seems appropriate.
You think so? Go ahead. All right, there we go. Here we go. Nice. Here we go. I am Jim Collison. I'm here with Maika Leibbrandt. Maika, thanks for coming out today and give us a little bit of your background. What do we pay you to do here at Gallup?
Just hang out with you, Jim. That's the perks of my job. I am a workplace strategist here at Gallup, so it's my job to keep my ear to the ground on what works at work, and then help our clients snap that together in terms of how do they learn what research is telling us and really take action on it. It's a lot of how do you just do the next right thing, and that. Part of that encompasses my role with CliftonStrengths, where I have the privilege and honor of having a say in how strengths are taught and used and coached, making sure that this language that can be, brilliantly universal truly is understood at that universal level.
Today we are talking about the themes 6 through 10, and pretty much with the advent of the CliftonStrengths for Managers report last year that now gives the top 10. A year before that, we released a brand new all 34 report. Individuals now have the ability to upgrade to see this 6 through 10. And I think it's a question we get a lot of, Maika, is what do I do now that I have this? What do I do with this? So Why are we talking about 6 through 10? What are they?
Yeah, they're really just a way to understand even more about who you are. There is nothing magical about the numbers. There's not like a huge breaking point between number 5 and number 6. Really, the effort around strengths that's in line with the philosophy of strengths is how do we help people focus more on areas of ease, excellence, and joy. And that, up until, the, I think, more broadly available opportunity to look at 6 through 10, said, okay, well, should we just focus on one? Should we focus on three? Five sounds good. Let's focus on five. So, what 6 through 10 does when it's used correctly, I think, is expands that understanding to give you a fuller picture of who you are. And remember, it's still just your top 10 out of a potential 34. So, we're
Mm.
still not necessarily worried about the other third of the possibilities of how you could act.
It's great to see those folks that are joining us live dropping that in the chat. And so I appreciate you guys doing that as well. As we think about 6 through 10, let's dig in on that a little bit. What is
Mhm.
the difference between it? What's the difference 6 through 10 versus the your top five?
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's not a hard and fast numbers game, and the difference between the strengths that lie in numbers 6 through 10. And if you're very brand new to Clifton Strengths, I want to invite you to this conversation. What you receive, if you see your full 34, some people only ever look at their top 5, or like you mentioned with that manager report, maybe their top 10. But in the Clifton Strengths 34 report, it gives you the ranked listing of all 34 strengths. There's only 34. There's nothing hidden behind the scenes that you didn't get. And so there's always going to be one at the top, there's always going to be one at the bottom. And that those are ranked in order of intensity for how natural those patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior are to you. Meaning, number 1 is potentially so natural that it's like hard for you to understand. It's like the bridge of your nose. Sometimes we say other people know that to be true about you, but for you, it's how you've always operated. And that's why we need tools like this to reflect back to us how we're showing up in the world. For many people, they will feel like they really resonate with number 1, 2, and 3. And even 4 and 5 feels like it drops off a little bit. For others, even if you press them, they'll say, no, I am living, breathing, experiencing all 1 through 12. So the idea of 6 through 10, I don't want us to get too married to. You even, if you joined in our cold open, you even heard me say, I don't think I could tell you my top 10 completely accurately. I know a little bit of what's there, 6 through 10, but I certainly know them through the lens of what's 1 through 5, because that idea is in line with the idea of focusing on what you are rather than worried a little bit too much about what you're not. Another way that we describe the difference between 6 through 10 and 1 through 5 is just that they're definitely still there. You'd miss them if they were gone. They're a part of you, but it's like maybe your first 5 ish got the invite to the party, and 6 through
Mm.
10 are the plus one. So, what I notice showing up for people is they can make a little more sense of 6 through 10, or maybe even 6 through 12 or 13,
Mm.
when they think about it in the context of how are they blending together with their top strengths.
Mm. Just a reminder, if you've got questions for us during this program, throw those in the chat. Put a Q in front of them so we can see them. Just identify them quickly. There's a lot going on out there, but we want to take your questions. So when we think about personal development, then Micah,
Mhm, mhm.
do we treat 6 through 10 the same as we treat 1 through 5? And is there a hard stop like at 6, or a hard go? If we're going to do the opposite of a hard stop, is a hard go at 6? Talk a little bit about
I
that.
think you may have just coined a new phrase. Yeah, hard go. It's the definition of agility. Like just
Right.
just think and
Just
go.
just do it. But so when we think about personal development, what should the goal be?
Mhm. Jim, I think it's a great question, and I'm going to call out the question itself as perhaps missing the mark.
Mm,
But this is the question we get asked all the time, and I'm
right.
sure coaches get asked this by their clients. Should I make my lower strengths as strong as my other strengths? When you start using the tool to develop within the tool, it's kind of like a dog chasing its tail. Or I have a cat who chases her tail too. But, don't get stuck there. What we know truly leads people to better lives, whether that's their performance at work, their potential to thrive in their personal well being, their connection with others, is when you attach strengths to a personally salient goal.
Mm.
So, and we've said this a lot, but it's really easy to get sucked into. I have a tool. I now want to make these strengths stronger. Well, I don't know that there's any way that you could objectively measure that. You could take it again and there'll still be something at 10. There'll still be something at 1. I think the real goal is a little bit bigger than that. I would say it is getting yourself or your client to a place where you can notice your strengths in the wild. Notice what they mean for you, how they show up when you're at your best, how they show up when you're stressed. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it is Dr. Seuss week, so that felt appropriate. To that point, not just that you can stop at self-awareness, but that you can drive that toward alignment with how you solve the problems that you're faced with. So when you think about it that way, we can consider our top 10, our top 12, our top 15, if you really need it, to not just be that awareness of, yes, I'm great at this strength, but this gives me clues for how I can change the game in a way that aligns better with my most natural solutions, that are less about pleasing others or looking like you've got it all handled, and more about realizing you were worthy the whole time. Like your best ways of behaving are going to be from who you are and not from who you're not.
Ruth liked my comment of the hard go equals activator, her number 1. I have activator
Excellent.
number
So
5.
I pulled up my strengths. I have activator number 8. So maybe that was why I was all about the hard go.
That's something I have to think about. It just came out that way. Let's get hyper practical here for
Yeah.
a second as we think about for managers and coaches and even individuals, right? What are some strategies for incorporating 6 through 10? We've said kind of some theories around it, but let's get practical.
Okay, I've got three ideas here. The first is maybe go through all 34 just to familiarize yourself with the report, and not just to understand the tool, but to bring the tool to life in your life. Start at the top and ask yourself, does this always describe me? Does this always describe me? And be harsh. Does this describe you when you wake up from a dead sleep? Like, does this describe you when you're not thinking? If so, that's an always. Then go to the bottom and say, how often does this describe me? You'll probably be using the word never or rarely. The truth is, it's probably more like never, but if you need the permission, you can say rarely. And then read backwards up from 34, 33, 32, and then look for the breaking point where you're conflicted, because it sometimes describes you. What you are defining for yourself is what we would call your dominant talents are the always ones. Your lesser talents are the rarely or never ones, and your supporting talents are there in the middle. And so supporting themes, most people find, are anywhere between 10 and 29. And they might show up in certain situations. But again, if you start to get into this idea of strengths hoarding, where you want to be able to do everything on your own, and you say, okay, well, I'm not always this way, but it's okay because I've got it in the attic and I can like climb upstairs and get that strength when I need it, you're missing the entire point of strengths and collaboration and the beautiful, I think, result of being vulnerable enough to admit that you need a partner, that you're not some things. Most people will find that they do answer always to about their top 10 in my experience coaching. So that's, I think, why it's important, and why we've realized in the reports that we've released recently that it is super helpful to have more than just 5.
You and I have been working together for 6 years, completed 6 seasons. We did 5 of them, just you and I. And within our top 5, we have very similar themes, and yet you're strategic being number 1. I don't have that at all. I'm all activator, ideation, like 1,000 ideas. But in sessions when we were together, you would always bring that strategic in and say, okay, we've talked about all these things, but this is what we really need to do. And so for me, while I can do some of that, I needed to lean into yours to be able to really get that done. So for me, strategic's a little bit, I mean, I can do it. But do I want to rely on that all the time? Is that the best part for me? No, the best part of our partnership was you being hyper strategic in
Well,
all the
and
things
I
that we were
couldn't have
doing.
done it without your arranger, because my
Mm,
strategic is sort of like up here in the sky and in the brains, and it's the conceptual pattern recognition. Your arranger, once we say hard go, said,
yeah.
here's how the pieces fall into place. And
Mm,
yes, I could do that, but again, that's we're missing the point.
mhm,
Strengths, the if you really want to do the hard work of focusing on strengths, it's not just what you can do, it's what you can't help but do. And that means that you've got to make a decision to not do some things
mm,
in pursuit of where you could be truly excellent. And I think I've struggled with that, right? Like, I think normal humans and high achievers struggle with that, having to say no to certain ways of being to instead honor what could be deeper, truer, more beautiful of how you really do think. That's going to be a good moment, Riley. Tag that one. But you'd mentioned super practical, and I appreciate
yeah,
that. So,
yeah,
number one, super practical is that always, sometimes, never, just so that you can really see yourself in the tool. The second piece that I want to suggest is that you allow your clients and yourself to do exactly what Jim did at the top of this message: self select which of those top 10 that you're really noticing lately. The opposite of that I think too often as facilitators or coaches fall into, is we get too married to the hierarchical order of seeing them all in a row and in a line. And we'll say, tell me what you like about number one, or how is number six treating you? I always want that to be an invitation, because it's a micro opportunity that sometimes people don't even realize they're taking for self-awareness instead of
mm,
labeling. So instead of saying, let's talk about 6 through 10, back out, look at all 10 and ask somebody something like, which one of these has gotten you to a recent success? Or which one of these shows up when you're really struggling? Which one of these have you been noticing lately? Which one of these has been serving you in a partnership? And allowing people to sort of claim that on their own. So that's number two. And then number three, practical idea is to start to wade into the idea of theme dynamics by looking at partnerships within your top 10. An easy way to do that is to pull the strengths off of the page, either with the theme insight cards, if you're a tactile person and you can switch them around and pile them on top of each other, or even the strengths wheel, which people think they have to have a writable PDF. I'll let you in on a secret. It's just a circle. You can draw a circle with 10 pie slices and write your strengths around that circle. Just that visual cue, I think, activates something in your mind where you can notice. Here's the practical piece: start easy. Start by
mm,
looking for which of your own strengths are partnering together, and just look for twosies. Just look for which ones are roommates, which ones always show up together, which ones amplify each other. Or, like you just heard Jim and I talk about, which ones show up differently in different partnerships that you
mhm,
have. Jim,
mhm,
you and I both share ideation, and we can brainstorm with the best of them. And we've learned enough about each other to have these free flowing conversations about what if, and to not force ourselves to, like, decide by the top of the hour. We know that
mm,
whatever sticks to the wall will come up next time. But again, the difference is that my ideation has strategic and yours has activator and arranger. And
mhm,
so I think the practical tip around that is ultimately where you want to go with all 10 is giving somebody not just 10 labels in a line that
mhm,
describe the tool to them, but giving them 10 clues that describe the rest of their magnificence, so that they
mm.
can weave that together in a statement of who they are, what they bring, and what they need in order to bring it.
Mm. I love how you kind of think through this idea of theme dynamics. You and I spent all of season 2 of Theme Thursday. So if you just go on Google Theme Thursday Gallup season 2, you can go watch those. And we spent a lot of time thinking about those together. But what I was imagining as you were talking about this, Mike, it's a scenario where I take something from my top 5 and pair it to my top 10 intentionally. Now, is there
Mhm.
any magic to that? No, I'm just choosing some arbitrary numbers to do that.
Right.
But I think about, how does my number 1 arranger and my number 7 ideation, we've been talking a lot about that. And I'd bring positivity into that as well, which is number 6. But how do those 2, so when I'm trying to support all of these things going on at the same time, how else can I use ideation to uplift and support that arranger, right? How can
Mm,
how can I bring that in to provide that support? And I guess that's really the word I'm thinking of. And being very intentional about it in a writing or a talking or whatever your learning mode style is, to begin to think about what am I leading with, and then what themes am I using to support those, and maybe even building some maps. You could mind map that, right, where you kind of map that, how are these all supporting each other, in how are they doing it practically, not
yeah.
just in what we wish, but how are they actually doing that? I don't know, do you want to add anything to that,
Oh
Michael?
my gosh. Well, I just want to like tell people to go back because Jim's one of the best coaches out there. It's a well kept secret how good you are at this, Jim. But I'm thinking about a couple clients who I have. One of them in particular, I've been coaching for quite a while, and I'm always blown away in admiration at how often it will bring back his top 10. And so it really has become a tool that he can use to say, you know what, I have all of these at my disposal right now. I need to recluster them and see
Mm,
how maybe this one plus this one is really what's showing up for me.
mm,
And not just to name that, but to say, okay, what does that mean? I need to double down on how does that mean I need to take a different approach perhaps than just effort? When you look at that, I mean, I did not do the math, but now I'm thinking I should have, of how many possible pairs show up just in your top 10. um, and realizing that you actually do have everything you need, um, but that also might mean you have everything you need to ask for help,
mm,
right?
mm, mm.
I've recently been leaning into this idea that your strengths are stronger and your weaknesses are weaker than you realize, which is why you need partners and coaches and people to help you. And still, Jim, to your idea here that how can I shuffle the deck a little bit and look at
Mhm.
different approaches that I may have within me already, that could help you understand how to show up as a great partner.
Yeah, you did an exercise, and you alluded to this, that Kurt used to do all the time. Kurt Liesfeld, who's my
Mhm.
partner in Theme Thursday in season 1. Kurt used to cluster these, and I have a
Yeah.
cluster in my top 10 that's 8, 9, and 10, which is individualization, developer, and relator, right? All of those sit together. Those are all themes. They're all kind of relationship oriented themes, right? That help me,
Mhm.
actually, they help me work with people and be and do the managing type of things that I do. But that cluster at the bottom, while they may not be the dominant ones, when they're clustered together, they have this incredible ability to do some crazy things, right? And so I guess I'd encourage folks to look, as they're looking beyond their top 5 and they're adding in 10 or even all 34, to maybe pull those, and I call them triplets, but to pull those clusters out, as well, and then
Yeah.
say some things about them. What does this cluster do for me? Like, how does it practically help me actually do something? That's what I call my management cluster. That's the one that allows me to do what I need to do in my community management role today. Maybe many of you in the community didn't know I was using those 3. I don't talk about them very much, but I do spend a lot of time thinking about them because that's what I need. I need those 3 working in harmony to be able to do what I do, and not small h on the harmony there.
So what does that mean? When you illuminate that you've got this cluster around
Mm.
relationship, how does that serve you? Do you behave differently because you know that?
I think sometimes I need to remind myself that I have that going into, sometimes in management situations, it's hard, right? It's just when anywhere 2 or more people are gathered, there's conflict.
Mm.
So thinking about that from a perspective of okay, how do I bring, if I've got work to do with people, how do I bring individualization in, knowing I've got to custom build a solution or solve the problem at an individual level. I've got to go one on one with them, both from individualization and relator, to make sure I'm having those deep, like, I can't custom build things for them if I don't know them, right? I also have to
And that's
know
not
them.
a universal truth. Like that is for you,
Right.
right? There's
Right.
plenty of people who build things
Right.
without knowing the
Right.
customer and do really well,
But
but
for
that
me,
wouldn't work
it
for
helps,
you.
yeah, it helps for it in for me, it helps for me to get to know them. Then, of course, having that, wanting to see them grow, like, that's the motivation, right? I wanna see them
Mhm.
grow in this, and so
Mm.
it just gives me that ability to kind of cluster those together in my, in my top 10, to kind of work in a way that's effective, that's successful,
Yeah.
for me. What else,
Um,
Micah? What else do you want to?
Jim, I think it's worth noting that what you're suggesting we can do around this comes back to a framework we already know as coaches, which is name, claim, and aim.
Mhm.
You naming that cluster, and I see Lynn in the chat says, where can I find out more about the clusters? This is not
I
necessarily,
just made it up.
there's not a
Like,
right or wrong to it.
right,
That's something
right.
that you need to name.
Yeah.
What clusters are you noticing right now? Within my top 10, there's some interesting ones that tend to hang out together that I'm not sure a coach on the page could pull out. But I mean, my strategic communication belief, that is 1, 4, and 10. On paper, those don't look like a cluster. But for me, I can absolutely tell you that that is my storytelling soapbox cluster.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it's a concept. It's a concept that isn't out of the blue. It is an extension of name your talent, claim why it's valuable. Jim's example of, oh, yeah, I remember I have this. I remember it's going to serve my customers. And I remember that I'm aim going to have to do this before I can run really hard. I'm going to have to individualize before I can achieve.
Mm.
That's how we keep coming back to the really great foundation that you already know how to do with people.
Yeah. I love what you just said there because I think sometimes we get when we start saying there's these universal clusters, we use them as crutches instead of using them as success tools. And you define that cluster for you. This is part of that name, claim, and aim, right? Saying, hey, for me, this is how my cluster works. There are some that naturally come together often. I think Woo communication positivity is another one of those triplets
Mhm,
that we
mhm.
see fairly often. But I want to challenge you to get away from this idea of a list and really dig in either for yourself or for individuals to say, how's this working for them? Nancy asked this great question out in chat. She says, in my top 10, I have mostly thinking themes. Micah, we hear this all the time.
Yeah,
Insert name of domain here, right?
great.
How do I balance that with maybe the lack of relationship building themes in that? Now, when we get more themes, when we look at 10, that starts evening itself out a little bit, but
Or it
some idea.
doesn't. There's
Yeah,
plenty of people
that's
where
true.
it doesn't.
That's
If you
true.
have
That's
the
true.
full 34, a report, a fascinating place to look is page 21. It looks like the periodic table of all of your top 10 strengths are colored in across the 4 domains of leadership. If you're not familiar with our conversation here, within the 34, there are 4 classifications that each one falls into one of. Strategic thinking is what Nancy leads with, it sounds like, describes people who are at their best when they've studied the problem. Now, depending on which strategic thinking strength you're working with, it might be slow, it might be fast, it might be heady, it might be out loud, it might be about the future or the past. So you can see how quickly this becomes hyper personalized.
Mhm.
But we also have relationship building, influencing, and executing. And I want to gently remind us not to chase your tail.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
Balancing across the 4 domains is solving for the tool, not pinning it to a goal that matters to you. Probably a truth, if you lead with thinking themes, is that you're going to solve problems by thinking through them. In and of itself, not having relationship building themes does not present a problem. Now, you might ask, how do you build relationships? And it might be that you study people. It might be that you think about people. But these 4 domains, even themselves, are not expectations. They
Mhm.
are explanations.
Yeah. Well, we spend all this time saying how unique we are, and then we try to use the domains to make us I gotta have them. They have to all be the same.
Oh, I
It's
need them all. I need them all.
yeah, and you're like, why did we just do that? So think through that, Micah. In the 1 minute that we have left, and gosh, 30 minutes goes so fast. Anything you want to
Are we
wrap this
really
up? We
there?
are
Oh my
really at the end.
gosh.
It goes super fast.
Oh,
Anything you want
Riley
to
was
remind
probably
them?
telling us in the private chat, like, "You too, stop talking."
I know we were talking too much.
Yes, in classic teacher style, I'm gonna tell you what I just told you. 3 main points. Strengths 6 through 10 matter, but only if you're looking at them in alignment with the philosophy of strengths. Focus more on who you are than who you're not. If you're looking at 6 through 10 to somehow prove that you have everything, you should probably start over. Let go of strength hoarding. And
Mm,
that, when we try to be everything, I think it stems from this. It's a different flavor of people pleasing. You have power in just one of your strengths. You don't need 10. you have them, and knowing what they are will illuminate more of what you already knew to be true about yourself. So stand in that power and take that back from instead thinking that you have to be all things to all people. Double down on who you already are. So 6 through 10 matter if you can do it in that way. Number 2, consider theme dynamics. Last week, I was with a brilliant group of leaders, and a few of the people in the group, one of them was a certified coach. A few of them had some experience with strength, and most of them were new to it. And I noticed that there was this beginner mindset to want to talk about each strength as a singular experience. And we went around the table, and everybody sort of described how these different pieces, their different strengths, eventually added up to who they were. And we came around, and thankfully, magically, the certified coach in the group went last. And when he described how he showed up, it was such a different experience. It wasn't just looking at how do I, clip together the different Lego blocks, but hey, I've built a tower, and I'm going to tell you who I am as one being and not as 10 pieces of a person. So that is where you can get to. And there's beauty in that. It's very often why it's a great idea to find a coach, because they're trained to be able to see the links between your strengths and the theme dynamics. So the easy way to do that is to start with pairs. And we also talked today about clusters, so we'll throw that in there as well. And my third big point is don't get too hung up on the numbers. Make it easy on yourself. If you can only remember one of your top strengths, focus on that one and think about what that means for you. If you can remember, if 10 is what you're ready for, or 7 or 12, that's brilliant too.
Just a reminder on our way out, this will be available right there on LinkedIn as soon as we're done here. So maybe you came late or there's some things you want to listen to again. You can go right back onto our LinkedIn page, our Clifton Strengths LinkedIn page, showcase page, and watch it again if you want. And then we'll be moving this to the Clifton Strengths Podcast. So if you haven't subscribed to that yet, go ahead and head out to your favorite podcast app and just search the Clifton Strengths, all one word, podcast. Subscribe to it so you never miss an episode. Want to thank you for joining us today. It's always great to be on LinkedIn. It goes super fast. Appreciate you guys coming out and being a part of this. And till the next time, we'll say goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.